Hello, it's Angie, and welcome to episode 1 of our series on trying to address the problem of our changing financial economy and how it's affecting the everyday person. Today's episode asks the question, how does somebody enter politics, earn a public salary, and end up becoming extremely financially secure? I'm not talking like 1 million, but I'm talking about millions of pounds. It's a question that millions of people increasingly ask. Have you noticed how our politicians and leaders have changed over the past 40 years? And honestly, when you look at modern Britain, it's not difficult to understand why, against a backdrop of life feeling so much more expensive now, out of reach housing, taxes feeling heavier, savings buying less every year, young families increasingly feeling trapped between rising rents and impossible housing prices, and many pensioners increasingly feel they worked their whole lives only to end up worrying about money anyway. Meanwhile, modern politics often appears to operate inside a completely different financial world. So today I want to carefully investigate why that may be happening. Not by blaming left or right political versions, because that stops us seeing a much bigger change underneath it all. This is not about politicians secretly breaking rules. It's about the system that gradually changed over decades and permitted this wealth to grow among our politicians, and creating a political class, this is the main point, increasingly separated from ordinary economic life, from us. Can you relate to the modern day politician? Can they properly relate to us then? We need to start by looking at the older political world, 40 or 50 years ago, because then our older political class was far more mixed socially. Many politicians still came from trade unions, manufacturing industries, teaching, local government, military service, small businesses, journalism, and traditional community life. Some were certainly privileged. We know that Britain has always had establishment politicians, but Parliament often contained a broader social mix than many people feel it does today. Politicians broadly lived in the same country they did and broadly understood where they were coming from. Right, let's now look at the great economic shift in the 1980s, shall we, under the Thatcher regime. Because over the last 40 years, Britain changed economically in profound ways. The country gradually moved away from manufacturing, local industry, unionised labour, and production-based economics towards finance, global capital, property wealth, asset ownership, consultancy, services, and financial markets. And politics changed alongside it. As Britain became more financialised, politics became more professionalised. Let's look at the professional political class in more detail to understand what happened. Today, many politicians increasingly emerge from remarkably similar pathways: elite universities, political research jobs, think tanks, communications firms, consultancy, law, finance, lobbying, media, and political advisory roles. This matters enormously because modern politicians increasingly enter politics already professionally successful, often already financially secure, often already owning property, often already deeply connected to elite institutional networks and rewards. Of course, many people increasingly ask, are these people genuinely representative of ordinary life anymore? Let's look at the official 2026 figures of the modern political wealth in our country. The average full-time UK salary sits at about £35,000. Now, the official MP salary is nearly 3 times that, £98,599. The Prime Minister estimated package is £160,000 to £170,000 plus. Before we even discuss outside earnings, we need to look at the starting point. Modern politicians are already paid far more than most ordinary workers. An MP salary of almost £100,000 instantly places politicians among Britain's highest earners. And MP salary is nearly 3 times, as I said, the average full-time salary. And that is before published books, speaking fees, broadcasting, consultancy and investments, pensions and property wealth. Now, immediately some people will say, yes, but 100,000 does not automatically make somebody rich. That's very true. But wealth compounds, especially over decades. Look at this table of 20-year professional earnings, plus property growth, pension accumulation, investments, media earnings, speaking fees. So you take a professional political household earning £120,000 to £180,000 per year over 20 years. That creates millions in career earnings before investment growth even begins. And then you add rising property prices, pension growth, inheritance, outside work, media opportunities, and financial advice. Yes, all of that wealth. And suddenly, the escalation of modern political wealth becomes much easier to understand. Not necessarily relatable to ordinary households at all. Let's have a look at these models of our main politicians. Let's start with Keir Starmer, the elite professional model. Keir Starmer represents the elite professional model. Before Parliament, he had already built a highly successful legal career as a senior barrister and later Director of Public Prosecutions. This matters because many modern politicians no longer enter politics from financial insecurity like they once did. They often arrive already professionally successful with a strong earnings history, pensions, political ownership, elite networks and influence, and advanced financial knowledge. And this increasingly separates politics from ordinary economic life. Okay, let's look at Angela Rayner. Oh, I'm dealing with the supposed left-wing Labour Party now, aren't I? Angela Rayner represents a different political story. Now, she did have working class roots, trade union politics, non-elite educational pathways. But even this story eventually collided with Britain's housing economy, because over the last 30 years, Britain increasingly stopped generating wealth mainly through wages and increasingly generated wealth through property ownership. Imagine 2 people in 1998. One buys a modest home for £140,000. The other keeps renting. By 2026, the first may now own hundreds of thousands in passive property wealth, while the second may still be locked out entirely. Look at this table. That's a passive gain of £460,000. And this is where many younger people increasingly feel the ladder was pulled upward behind them. Let's look at Nigel Farage, the media model. Nigel Farage represents another major change in modern politics. The media model. Politics increasingly emerged with broadcasting and television, publishing, online visibility, speaking circuits, and political branding. Political attention itself became commercially valuable. Modern politicians are no longer simply lawmakers. They increasingly become broadcasters, influencers, public personalities, and media brands. And this is one of the biggest transformations in modern politics globally, not just in this country. Let's move on to look at Kemi Badenoch, the corporate model, because Kemi Badenoch represents the corporate professional model. Before politics, she worked in technology, systems management, and financial institutions. Again, she was highly educated, highly professional, and already financially secure before Parliament. And many modern politicians increasingly emerge from similar professional worlds. That's the world of law, finance, consultancy, communications, media, think tanks, and lobbying. And this leads many ordinary people to increasingly ask, do modern politicians genuinely understand ordinary financial life anymore? Then we have Polanski. Now he is the digital attention model. Polanski represents perhaps the newest political pathway of all, the digital attention model, because politics increasingly survives through social media, digital visibility, online branding, podcasts, activism, and platform influence. You see, visibility itself increasingly has economic value. The politician of the future may increasingly resemble a permanent online media personality. And here's the bigger economic trap. Because if we step back from politicians themselves completely, we find the real engine behind modern wealth inequality is not individual politicians, it's the structure of the economy itself and what politicians represent. Britain increasingly has become an asset inflation economy, and this changed everything. Let's look at the political wealth gap, shall we? As I showed you before, we saw how property prices have snowballed and property wealth is rising faster than wages. So if somebody was old enough or wealthy enough to buy assets, not just houses, decades ago, the economy often handed them enormous passive wealth growth. Meanwhile, younger generations increasingly struggle even to enter the market today. And this creates a major emotional divide between ordinary people and political leadership. Many voters increasingly feel the people making the rules no longer live in the same economic world that they live in. This is the result of the professionalisation of politics. Many modern politicians move through elite universities, think tanks, communications firms, lobbying environments, consultancy, media, and party structures before entering Parliament. Many have never run a struggling small business or experienced serious cash flow pressure, or waited months for NHS treatment, or lived through prolonged financial insecurity. That does not automatically make politicians bad people, but it absolutely can make them insulated, and insulation changes perspective. Let's look at the trust problem. Ordinary British life consists of bus drivers, nurses, commuters, pensioners, shop workers, young families. Ultimately, the biggest damage caused by political wealth is not simply financial, it is trust. Democracies struggle when large parts of the population begin believing the people making laws are protected from the consequences of those laws. The moment ordinary citizens feel politicians are insulated from everyday economic pressure, trust begins breaking down. And perhaps that is the real political wealth question underneath all of this. Not simply how did politicians become wealthy, but how do we rebuild a country where political leaders once again genuinely understand ordinary economic life? I would genuinely like to hear your thoughts below. Do you think modern politics now feels more professional, more media-driven, more financially insulated, or less representative of ordinary life than it did decades ago? And what kind of politician do you think Britain now needs? Let the debate begin. Something needs to change, and we need to talk about how this can happen. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye for now.